This is a crash course on the basics of the Bible. There are many new believers that are reaching out to me, and I do realize that not all of us grew up in the church, and maybe there are some people who just need the rudimentary information that most of us take for granted. So, here's your crash course. This is a Bible. Yeah, I know it's seen better days, but at least you know I use it. This is the English Standard Version. Now, the Bible was not originally written in English. The first portion, the Old Testament, was written mostly in Hebrew, and the second portion, the New Testament, was written mostly in Greek. So anytime you see the word version or translation, what it means is there was a different group of people who went to the original texts and then translated it into English, so there might be some discrepancies between one version and another. Now, that's not to say that one translation is right or wrong or better than the other. There are multiple ways to say things. I could say that the book was a good read, or I could say that the pages had a great story. It's essentially saying the same thing. Every Bible has a table of contents, and what you're going to find is the Old Testament is Genesis all the way through Malachi. Now, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy are known as the Torah, the Law, or the books of Moses. Moses is specifically responsible for writing these. Then you have the books of history, which includes Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Now, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther are also historical accounts as well, but they specifically have to do with Israel when it was no longer a country. Job is an independent story which may have taken place before Abraham. Psalms is basically like a hymn book. It's a book of songs and poetry. Proverbs is the wisdom that Solomon wrote down for his children. Ecclesiastes is his thoughts on life. And Song of Solomon is a love book from a man to a woman. Now, Isaiah all the way down through Malachi, these are all different prophets that God has sent, with the exception of Daniel. Now, Daniel was a prophet, but his book is a lot more than that. This is where you find the story of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, but also the second half of his entire book is apocalyptic. And the word apocalypse just simply means revealing. There's revelation in it. It is the revealing of the end times according to what God showed him. Now, in the New Testament, you have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They are known as the Gospels. It's followed by Acts, which is the Acts of the Apostles after Jesus ascended into heaven. Romans all the way through Thessalonians is Paul's writings to the churches. 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon are Paul's letters to specific people. Hebrews, we're not sure who the letter was written by, but it is a New Testament look at the writings of the Old Testament. James is a letter written by James. 1st and 2nd Peter, of course, were written by Peter. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John were all written by the same guy who wrote the Gospel of John, and he's also the same guy who wrote the book of Revelation. And then, of course, Jude, he was a brother of Jesus as well as James, and he wrote a letter as well. So the Old Testament, the word testament simply means covenant. This is the Old Covenant, this is the New Covenant, and covenant is basically a very serious promise. Here's the serious promise God gave to the nation of Israel, and here's the serious promise that he's given to the rest of the world through Jesus. So now how do I read this thing? Well, first you have the books. So this is the book of Genesis. Then you see these numbers, these big numbers, these are the chapters. So here's 16. And so these little tiny numbers right here, hold on, let me zoom in. There you go, that tiny number right there. Those are the verse numbers. So if you see a verse reference like this, X 6:6, X stands for the book, Exodus, 6 is the chapter, then after the colon is the verse. And sometimes you see a hyphen, like here. So Isaiah chapter 7, verses 11 through 13. So you might ask, what are with all these little letters and numbers right here, the other ones? Well, the letters correspond with this. This is called a cross-reference. So within the verse of verse 3, you look for D. So up here, it will tell you what other verse corresponds in the Bible with the passage you just read. the tiny little numbers actually correspond down here to what are called footnotes. So example, the one we saw was footnote number 4, and it says in Hebrew, it could be translated as, her mistress was dishonorable in her eyes. So there's usually some kind of translation discrepancy. They're just letting you know the whole honest truth. It could be translated this way or that way. And lastly, this is the most important thing right here. This little ribbon, what is that? That's your bookmark. Read your Bible and keep on going.